Hello, my name is Tyler Jaynes, and I am a current student at the Algorithmic Bioethics Institute at Albany Medical College. I am a bioethicist, but I focus on emerging technologies and how they impact society, not just specifically patients, but society in general, because regardless of how often you see the physician, if you see a physician at all, anything that is advanced in that field ultimately comes around to impact you in some way or other. And that is a very common feature that we see in all digital technology today, anything, internet based. And, this work is based off of a recent publication of mine where I'm trying to establish a common definition for how we measure virtual environments as a way to maybe set the stage for the granting of rights to very specific artificial intelligence systems or to those that might otherwise be no longer considered human because they have given themselves so many bionic prosthetics that it makes it very difficult to tell what part of them is actually human and what part of them is actually computer. And that's, again, not a situation that we're going to be running into very immediately, but it crops up enough in science fiction media, and obviously some research is going in that direction. So it's just good to get a hop on this while we have the chance. And, the biggest reason is obviously that legal experts internationally are missing a crucial aspect of what virtual property is, because we understand some certain aspects of the internet. We would have to, because it is a very intricate system and a lot of gray territory still exists there when we start talking about international law. Local law, some places are a little bit better, but again, depends on the part of the world that you're in. But, there's going to be bigger issues as we start getting more familiar with blockchains, as we get more familiar with non-fungible tokens, as we start to create more immersive virtual reality platforms. And, we have to start asking ourselves, is information the same across all mediums? Is there something unique about digital information because it can be replicated so quickly? Or, is it just that we have to treat it in a different manner, maybe limit how often it can be replicated, how often it is double or triple or quadruple stored, or, nth amount of time stored into some other system? Um, Obviously, another issue that comes up is, can a single IP address be tied exactly to a single individual? Or, in the case of public computers, say, does that become a lot more difficult? And how do we retrieve that information from your use of that public computer so that it is part of some sort of digital profile that is specific to you? And then, of course, what should qualify as personal information and public information on an internet search? How do we establish these things in a way that doesn't infringe upon a nation's right to be autonomous in determining what matters to their national security? And, those are all very big questions that we're still struggling with today, and we're going to continue to struggle with because it is such a thorny issue. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I reference science fiction media a lot because it is our window into our musings on what society might become. What are our augmented societies going to possibly look like? What are our immersive societies actually going to look like? And, some of these, obviously, the science is going to be different if it exists at all. But there are other aspects of them, like what we see in Black Mirror, which are a bit more true to how society actually is today, and what we actually envision these sorts of technologies to be once we get to the point of actually creating them. And unlike with other technologies that we've created to this point, we have a massive trove of science fiction media that we can look into, that we can, debate on what is actually feasible, what people will be inspired by, what people will actually put their life's research into, so that we can help kind of manage how it gets developed, how it gets regulated, and ultimately how we can try to get public opinion behind it if it is a less popular device or technology. Now, the big aspect of that is going to be finding a measurement that is comparable in virtual spaces to physical spaces. Because if we're just talking about text-based tidbits of information, the bytes, that's going to be different from multimedia forms. That's going to be different if it's just a picture, if it's just music, because the computer reads them in different ways. And obviously, we can say I have, 2-3 terabytes maybe worth of information, but a terabyte storage device can come in many different shapes and sizes. And in some circumstances, it can be owned by a multiplicity of parties, not just myself. It can be owned in part by Microsoft. It can be owned in part by Google. It can be owned in part by Wikipedia. These sorts of conglomerates that house this information and make it accessible to the public, give or take what that information actually is. And of course, the issue becomes a lot more thorny when we're talking about encrypted information, corrupted information, compressed information, pixel depth, as it were. How do we define the colors? How do we define the parameters of what a specific pica or pixel is going to look like? Are we actually using American-based pica systems? Are we using the French-based pica systems? It's just a huge, huge mess that we haven't really had time to sort out because the technology is just advancing that quickly. So my solution ultimately is to consider virtual and physical spaces to be intertwined to the point where we can't really segregate them. And that serves us for a multiplicity of reasons. I mean, if we're trying to establish a universal right to be forgotten, or if we want to try to consolidate our information in such a way that we, say, create a virtual avatar or a virtual portfolio that actually represents who we are in digital space, then it becomes a lot easier for us to go into a court and say, okay, this is my avatar. This is the information that I'm contending is mine, and someone is contending is theirs. We have the approximation of what the size is in physical space. Let's resolve this issue. It becomes a lot easier to do when we are able to compare these things. And obviously, it helps us as well when we're trying to maybe further develop our cybersecurity infrastructure, because now we're actually taking into further consideration how is blockchain going to impact our ability to protect ourselves? How is the implementation of AI to hack into AI developed encryptions and all that going to change? So I'm just going to wrap it up here. I know that there are going to be questions that you all want to present. You can do that during the live salon discussion. You can also reach out to me at that email address I put here. And of course, if you want to read the fuller article because you might find something that you fancy in there, I've put the citation information there. Sorry that I can't directly give the links, but if you holler at me one way or another, I'm more than happy to do what I can to make that available to you. So I thank you for your time and attention, and I will look forward to talking to you at a later time.